Close your eyes for a moment and picture the school canteen of your childhood. The clatter of metal trays, the steam rising from giant silver serving tins, and the unmistakable smell of something vaguely meaty drifting through the air. It was a world of hot puddings, strange colors, and recipes you'll never see on a menu today. Some dishes were comforting. Others, well, let's just say they were an acquired taste. Today, we're taking a trip back in time to the 10 British school dinners we'll never see again from the 1970s and 1980s, the foods that filled our bellies, puzzled our taste buds, and somehow became part of who we are. Number 1. Pink custard. If you grew up in a British school during the 1970s or 1980s, you'll remember the sight and smell of pink custard. It wasn't strawberry. It wasn't raspberry. It was simply pink. This mysterious dessert would arrive in great steaming jugs, ready to be poured over sponge cake, jam roly-poly, or sometimes just into a bowl on its own. The color came from a touch of red food dye and a hint of fruit flavoring, but to children, it was magic. You'd watch as the dinner lady's ladle sent it cascading like a sugary waterfall, pooling into warm pastel puddles on your plate. It was sweet, smooth, and oddly comforting, the perfect counter to the stodge of the main course. By the late 80s, pink custard began to vanish, replaced by healthier options. But for those who remember it, one whiff of warm vanilla is enough to bring the memories rushing back. Number 2. Spam fritters. Golden, crispy, and unapologetically greasy, spam fritters were the ultimate canteen indulgence of the 1970s and early 1980s. Picture a thick slab of processed tinned spam, dipped in batter until it was fully coated, then deep-fried until the edges turned a rich amber brown. When you bit through the crunch, the salty, savory meat inside was piping hot and satisfying. Spam's popularity in school kitchens had roots in wartime Britain, when its long shelf life and low cost made it a hero ingredient. Even decades later, it remained a thrifty way to feed hundreds of hungry children. On a cold, grey day, nothing seemed more filling. But as the push for healthier eating swept through schools in the late 80s and 90s, battered processed meats fell out of favor. Today, spam fritters survive mainly in fish and chip shops, but for many, the memory of them in a school dinner hall is impossible to forget. Number 3. Semolina pudding. For some, semolina pudding was the highlight of the school week. For others, it was the one dessert that made them groan when they saw it on the counter. Thick, creamy, and served hot, semolina was a simple dish of milk, sugar, and coarse wheat grains cooked until soft. In the 1970s and 1980s, it was often presented with a spoonful of bright red jam in the center, slowly melting into the pale pudding. Its popularity in school kitchens stretched back to post-war Britain, when it was considered a wholesome, inexpensive way to fill young stomachs and boost calcium intake. The texture could be a little lumpy, and the flavor mild, but for many, that warmth on a cold winter's day was pure comfort. As lighter, trendier desserts took over in the 90s, semolina quietly disappeared. Still, for those who loved it, the memory is as sweet as the jam it came with. Number 4. Jam roly-poly. If there was ever a dessert that could brighten up a rainy school day, it was jam roly-poly. A true British classic, this suet-based pudding was rolled with a generous layer of strawberry or raspberry jam, baked until golden, and sliced thick for serving. In the 1970s and 1980s, you'd find it waiting in giant metal trays in the school kitchen, still steaming from the oven. The dinner ladies would place a hefty slice on your plate before drowning it in custard, sometimes even that famous pink custard. Its roots stretch back to Victorian times, when it became a thrifty way to use pantry staples, and it stayed popular for decades thanks to its filling nature and sweet, homely flavor. By the 1990s, lighter desserts began replacing heavy suet puddings, and roly-poly became a rare treat. But for many, the swirl of jam inside still stirs up warm, comforting memories. Number 5. Turkey Twizzlers, early version. Long before they became the subject of national headlines, Turkey Twizzlers had a simpler, almost innocent presence in the 1980s school dinner hall. These spiral-shaped strips of seasoned turkey meat were designed to be fun as much as filling. Lightly spiced, slightly crispy on the outside, and tender inside, they were easy to eat and endlessly popular with children. Served alongside chips or mash, they were the kind of main that could guarantee clean plates all around. For busy school kitchens, they were a dream, quick to cook in large batches and relatively cheap. While the early versions weren't quite as heavily processed as the ones later criticized in the 2000s, they still fell victim to the wave of healthier eating reforms in the 90s. Today, the name Turkey Twizzler might spark debate, but for those who remember the original, it's a reminder of a simpler, more carefree lunch menu. Number 6. Chocolate Concrete. Despite its name and its rock-like first bite, chocolate concrete was a dessert that won over generations of school children. In the 1970s and 1980s, this dense, cocoa-infused slab would be served in thick squares, often with a splash of custard to soften it just enough for your spoon to break through. The recipe was simple: flour, sugar, margarine, cocoa powder, and a bit of elbow grease. Once baked, it developed a hard, satisfying crust, while the inside remained just chewy enough. Some schools paired it with mint custard, giving it a fresh twist that's still talked about in nostalgic tones today. Chocolate concrete was cheap, easy to make in large trays, and could sit for hours without losing its shape, perfect for busy canteens. Healthier, softer desserts eventually took its place, but for many, the satisfying crack of that first bite is a memory you can almost taste. Number 7. Cornflake Tart. Golden, sticky, and impossibly sweet, Cornflake Tart was a true playground legend in the 1970s and 1980s. Built on a short crust pastry base, it was layered with a thin spread of strawberry or raspberry jam, then topped with cornflakes coated in syrup, butter, and sugar. Baked until the edges crisped and the topping glistened, it was always served warm, usually with a generous pour of custard. The recipe had thrifty roots in the post-war years, when schools looked for cheap ways to use surplus breakfast cereal. But over time, it became a staple dessert, beloved for its mix of crunchy and soft textures. You could hear the quiet crackle as your spoon broke through the syrupy cornflakes into the soft jam layer beneath. By the 1990s, ready-made puddings and healthier menus edged it out. But for those who remember, Cornflake Tart is still the taste of childhood in a single bite. Number 8. Butterscotch Angel Delight. Light, airy, and sweet enough to make you grin. Butterscotch Angel Delight was a small taste of luxury in the school canteen of the 1970s and 1980s. Unlike most puddings, it didn't need baking or steaming. It came as a powder in a packet, whisked with milk until it turned into a smooth, fluffy mousse. Butterscotch was the undisputed favorite, with its golden color and caramel-like flavor, though strawberry and chocolate versions sometimes made an appearance. Served in little bowls, it wobbled slightly as you carried it to your table, the promise of a creamy spoonful ahead. Angel Delight first appeared in Britain in the late 1960s, and its convenience made it a hit with overworked dinner ladies. By the 1990s, it began disappearing from school menus as scratch-made and healthier desserts took over. But for those who grew up with it, one taste can still send you straight back to childhood. Number 9. Liver and Onions. Few school dinners divided opinion quite like liver and onions. In the 1970s and 1980s, it was a regular sight on the menu, a thick slice of fried liver, topped with a heap of soft, caramelized onions, all swimming in rich brown gravy. Served alongside mashed potatoes and a pile of veg, it was filling, hearty, and, according to teachers and dinner ladies, good for you. Liver had been a post-war staple in Britain, prized for its affordability and high iron content. But for many children, the strong flavor and chewy texture were a challenge. You could spot the ones who loved it, plates wiped clean, and the ones who pushed it around with a fork, hoping it might somehow disappear. As families began eating less offal at home, liver and onions slowly vanished from school kitchens, leaving behind equal parts fond nostalgia and shuddering memories. Number 10. Cheese Pie. Before vegetarian options became a menu talking point, there was cheese pie, a hearty, comforting dish that warmed both stomach and soul in the 1970s and 1980s. This wasn't the delicate quiche of modern cafes. It was a thick, golden bake, often with a base of short crust pastry or mashed potato, topped with a generous layer of melted cheddar cheese sauce. Sometimes onions or leeks were mixed in, adding a gentle sweetness under the rich topping. Served in hearty wedges with baked beans or salad, it was a thrifty way for school kitchens to feed hundreds without meat. The smell of bubbling cheese would drift from the kitchen, pulling children toward the serving counter. By the 1990s, lighter pasta dishes and jacket potatoes began to take its place. But for those who remember, one bite of cheese pie is enough to bring back a whole lunchtime scene, tray and all. School dinners of the 70s and 80s were more than just food, they were part of the rhythm of growing up. Some of them we loved, some we endured. But all of them are tied to the smell of the canteen, the chatter of classmates, and the comfort of something warm on a tray. Which of these school dinners do you remember most? Did I miss your favorite? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear your stories. And if this trip down memory lane made you smile, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time for more slices of the past.